All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another exciting edition of How Do I Do This Anyways? Today's topic of conversation is going to be making a digital model of your residential roof truss. So let's go ahead and get started on that. First thing you need to do, go into your flash drive and you want to go ahead and make a project folder called Residential Roof Truss Exploration, and make sure that the assignment is actually in there, so that way you can always find all the parts of your files. Then what you're going to do is you're going to want to place a image of this, so that way you can just trace it instead of trying to figure out the geometry of yourself. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to use my snip tool, click new, and I'm just going to go ahead and click a snip of the one that I want. I'm going to save that, and you want to place that inside of your project folder, okay? So it might take some navigating. Place it in the project folder you just created. I'm going to call this King Post 3 because I've done this a couple times. All right, so now I have that image. I can go ahead and close that out. I don't even really need that, but I'm going to leave it open for right now. And if you have your File Explorer open, you should see your King Post popped up into your folder, so you should be able to find that. I'm going to go ahead and click my Home button to take me back home and start my file from here. I'm going to click New, and I want to be in English because I want to work in inches. I don't want to work in metric. So I just double click the standard inch IPT, and now I've opened a standard inch IPT. I'm going to click Start New Sketch, and I want to select that face. So I'm going to be right there on that surface. Now, first I'm going to click my rectangle tool. I'm panning over a little bit, although it's not necessary. And I'm going to start with a green dot constraint at the origin, and I'm going to type in 16 inches wide, and then I'm going to hit tab and go 8 inches tall. You don't actually need any of that. It's just helpful as a guide to make sure your truss is wide enough. Your dimension should fit on whatever the truss tester is for that year. Check with your teacher. Now, the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to import that image I just made. So I want to click Insert, Image, and then I'm going to find my file inside of my project folder that I just made. Now, most people want to click on a corner where there's a green dot constraint or where there's a line. I'm going to tell you not to make any constraints, okay? Just click off to the side and then hit escape, because what that gives us, it gives us freedom to move it around however we feel like. Now, if you grab a corner, it stretches it and rotates it, okay? So what you want to do is you want to stretch this thing out so that it is the size that you want it to be. I'm going to go ahead and I'm just going to make mine so that way that inside triangle, which is what I'm going to build, is going to be the 16 inches. Okay, now I'm just going to drag it on down, making sure that I stay-ish where that inside is on the 16 inches. You don't have to line it up perfectly with the rectangle. That was just mostly the length of it is important, and then staying within a reasonable height is important as well. Now all I'm going to do is I'm going to take my line tool, and I'm going to come over here to the vertex where the trusses meet. Okay, it's wanting to pop up with a constraint on that line. You don't necessarily have to do that. I'm just going to where the truss parts meet in that nice corner. And I'm selecting this inside corner because I can see a nice large triangle right there. So you see how I've got that nice triangle of lines? Now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to click my offset tool. I'm going to select that triangle, and I'm going to move it out by 0.25 inches. Okay. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to finish my sketch. It zooms me in at a weird place, and I'm going to go ahead and extrude that. I want this to be, it doesn't matter what kind of an extrusion it is. It's just going to pull forward, and it's going to pull forward by 0.25 inches because we're using 1/4 inch balsa. Now, when I look at this thing, I cut it off right there. So when we're extruding it, actually I'm going to grab my trim tool. So that way it doesn't cut off my edges. There we go. So now what I can go ahead and do is I'm going to make a 2D sketch on, selected the wrong surface. I'm going to delete that sketch. I want to make a 2D sketch on that flat surface. Okay. Now, if you would like to bring up your sketch, then what you need to do is turn the visibility on this. Okay, so if you have a complex web, then I would suggest you just bring the geometry up and you trace your lines. For something as simple as this, I'm going to show you how you make your truss member based on the geometry that's here. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to come up here and just kind of eyeball where the center is and where it goes through that vertex. And I'm clicking that. And now I've hit escape. If I hover over this, you can still see my line, right? Now I'm going to go ahead and grab my offset tool. And I'm going to click this way. And I want to offset by 0.125 inches, but it's 1/8 of an inch, 1/2 of a 1/4 of an inch, okay? So that way, 1/8 of an inch plus 1/8 of an inch equals 1/4 of an inch of thickness. Now I'm also going to grab my project geometry tool and I'm going to project that inside triangle so that way it makes this truss member right here, that king post. So those are all I need on that sketch. I'm going to go ahead and hit extrude or E for the hotkey for it and select those 2 sections. Now I'm going to place it back or push it back 1/4 inch for the thickness of the material. Now I'm going to click OK. All right, so that is all I've got. You will probably end up having to draw more. That's fine. Now, in order to make this a little bit cleaner, I'm going to go ahead and turn the visibility off on that sketch. And now you can see it very clearly what I've sketched or what I've drawn up. Now I'm going to click the Save button to save it. And I want to call this King Post 4 because I've been at this for a minute. And it's going to automatically add the IPT at the end. We're going to click OK. Now, a very important thing to note is that we need a plane to apply our force onto. I'm going to want to apply a force for my stress test at that point, but I want it to be straight down. The easiest way to do that is to give it some geometry to work on. So I'm going to click my plane, and I'm going to make it parallel to plane through point. So I'm selecting this bottom plane to be parallel to, and then the point is right there. You see how it popped up right there? Yeah, that's exactly what we want to do, okay? So it gave me my work plane right there. That's what we need. And now what we can do is I'm going to go ahead and click Save again. And I'm going to come over here to my Environments tab. Here, the environment I care about is a stress analysis, so we're going to click that. Ooh. So we're going to create a study. Actually, before we do that, cancel out of that. Finish the analysis. I want to change my material. I want this to be wood, preferably balsa, but since they only have birch, I'm going to go ahead and do that, and I'm going to click Save. Now I'm going to come into my environment, and I'll begin a stress analysis. I'm going to create a study, and I'm just going to leave all this stuff alone. Next up, we don't have any parameters we need to assign here. We don't have to override any materials or anything since we just determined them. You can click this Find Thin Bodies, and what that's going to look for is basically something that's super thin or something that has a volume of 0, and that's nothing on this if you've done it correctly. Next, we're going to actually assign our points where it's going to be held still. So I'm going to put a fixed point at the corners. So I'm going to come over here to this corner, and I'm going to fix that point. And then I'm going to come over here to the other corner, and I'm going to fix that point as well. You see how it popped up with those two symbols? I'm now going to apply that, and those are now held still, okay? It will not move from those points. Now, go ahead and click cancel to clear that out. Now we want to apply our force, okay? We want to apply our force at this top location, right on that line. Now we have to tell it what direction we want it to apply in. So now we have to click that button, and this is why you need that plane, is so that way you can tell it where you want it to apply the force. So right there, it's pointing downwards. So that gives us exactly where we want it. Now if it was upside down, you could click that direction button, but it's not. So we're going to go ahead and I'm just going to give it 20 pounds for right now. Now I'm going to come over and I'm going to click, well, I'm going to click cancel now, and I'm going to click mesh view. Well, first off, detecting automatic contact, so it's going through and it found like how this piece, this king post was in contact with that outer triangle. It just made that one, and now we're going to mesh it. And you see how now we've got all these polygons on the surface? That's what we need. And now we're going to click simulate. Okay? Now we're going to run the simulation. And it did that. So what this is saying is that when you push down on this, you're going to get deformation across the truss like this. Now this is a von Mises stress test. If you look at first principle, it looks like that. Third principle, displacement. If you look at the key for the displacement, what you see is that the blue areas have the least amount of displacement or deformation, and then the red areas experience the most deformation. Okay, and then safety factor. You got 15 safety factor max. Now, you would apply more force, and more force. This is obviously exaggerated. Most of your trusses are not going to bend this much before they break. So this is what it looks like. That's the safety analysis. So that's how you do that. You want to go ahead and save this image. In fact, save that. You want to take a screenshot of that for your digital notebook, so that way you can make sure that you record that. When you record it, make sure you get what type of a test it is in this. If you're printing these, I strongly suggest color pictures. Otherwise, that is all. You can click Finish Analysis, and then you're done with it. Okay, so I believe that's it. Have a great day.